I'm just going to read this here, okay? That's Robert. I didn't memorize it, sorry. Normally I do. The youngest of three boys, Robert survived his childhood, barely. I'm just reading what you wrote. Okay. In Leetown, West Virginia, by relying on his captivating smile. Nice, there it is. Quick wit and large imagination. Although a decent student, he had no idea what to do after high school, so he worked for his parents. They own a nursery and landscaping business until he figured things out. Robert eventually decided to head off. Actually, he commuted to nearby Shepherd College. He graduated in 2003 with an elementary education degree and taught kindergarten for 3 years. Brave man. 2 in West Virginia, 1 in Hillsboro. Although he loved teaching most of it, he had a desire to have a greater effect on kids becoming avid readers and learners. Robert wrote Joe and the 10 Wishes in 2006 and opted to substitute and write some more. He also found himself visiting 15 schools as a guest author and talking with over 4,000 kids about reading, writing, and chasing their dreams. In addition to writing, he has returned to teaching elementary school and is always a dad. He loves watching football, playing golf, coaching basketball, running, comedies, daydreaming, and traveling. Although he hates parking. Did you all right tonight? Let's welcome Robert. Come on up.
All right. Very much like a first grade teacher, I'm going to set my own timer here so that I don't run over and I keep on track. And I have a little bit of time to promote my books at the end of this. You know, the great thing about being the first person off is that everyone is still captivated and I get to get it over with and just enjoy everyone else. The unfortunate thing is that you haven't had enough time to really enjoy your adult beverages, so I might not be as funny as I would otherwise be later in the evening. Anybody here from Michigan? Oh, great. So I have a Michigan person. Anybody ever met somebody from Michigan and had them tell you where they're from? How did they do it? They use their hand, right? They got the hand, and they'll tell you where in the hand. So Cindy, we're right there in the hand. So I'm from the other state where you can use a hand gesture to show people where you're from. If you don't know, if you don't know what West Virginia looks like, if you are surprised it's even a state, my wife was when we first met. She's like, "You're from Western Virginia?" I'm like, "Oh, close enough." But West Virginia. We have 2 panhandles. We have the one here, where I'm from, and then there's, I won't try to offend anyone, but there's the other northern panhandle, and so this is West Virginia if you look on it on the map. So that's where I grew up in the thumb, not in the middle finger, which is good. Growing up in West Virginia, the other thing, if people do know where West Virginia is, they automatically think of the movie Deliverance. They think of that and that association. That's not the part of West Virginia I grew up in. Although there are parts of the state where the state flower really is the satellite dish because it's planted in everybody's yard. True story. But growing up, some of the things that I survived, I didn't realize until I was in my mid-20s that it wasn't natural for a family to go to the emergency room every other week. That's just how we rolled as kids. I broke my arm playing Ring Around the Rosie. Freeze tag in the house. I broke my hand playing touch football. I swallowed a screw at one point in time. I passed out lifting 2.5 pound weights when I was 16. I once thought I lost my eyeballs, and so I ran full speed into my house. Now when I say I ran full speed into my house, it's not like, hey, I'm home. It's like my eyes are closed and I'm running full speed and my head hits the side of the wall and I knock myself out. I was in a car that hit a 2,000-pound magnet. No, the magnet was not turned on, otherwise it wouldn't have fallen off the metal truck. And up until last year when I played 180 holes of golf in one day for charity, my most famous athletic achievement was getting my foot caught underneath the fence during a Little League warm-ups, and they had to create the Bobby Tabb rule in case that actually happened in a game, that it would just be a ground rule double. But in addition to having this kind of bizarre and painful childhood, it was a really, really good childhood. But in addition to my gift for what I dub attracting stupid, which was also going to be the title of my autobiography until I met my wife and she ixnayed that for obvious reasons. I'm also plagued by a really, really weird imagination, and maybe some of the other authors have this as well. I mean, like if you see those road signs that are like cows next 20 miles, like I'm always expecting cows to just fall from the sky on my car. Like that's my immediate thought. Or there's this billiard place in Forest Grove. They used to have this sign that said "Families Welcome," which to most people seems like, wow, that's really great. Me, I think like, what the heck happens if someone tries to go in alone? Like a single person tries to go in. Are they going to like throw cue balls at them or chase them with sticks? Is there going to be a mob with pitchforks? Like, families only, get out of here. Like that's how my brain works. That got me in trouble a lot in school because I would be the kid. I was a pretty bright student, but I would be the kid that would just like, the teacher would say something about like marshmallows, and then I would just think of like marshmallow people on a marshmallow planet doing marshmallow things. And then they would call on me to like, you know, I'd hear my name like Bobby, and I'd be like, 24. You know, and they'd be like, this is reading. So, you know, those kinds of things. But the imagination has really helped as far as I've written and gotten to play with kids and work with kids. It comes in handy being able to relate to them. Now that I have kids of my own, a 6-year-old, a 3.5-year-old, and I've got another one on the way in March, has been great. So I'm just going to share a little bit from the Glass Collectors. And I don't know, like as a kid, of being like the person who's like not in something, kind of the left out kid. But in this story, Emerson is kind of that kid of he's like not ever really with it or kind of on the same page as everyone else. And it starts out, there's a 2-hour delay. The book's set in 1989. And there's this 2-hour delay, and everybody in the town knows it except for this kid. There are countless stories of other Marshall students of all ages, genders, and races who are enjoying a little bit of time to sleep in, play games, help out, or stay warm. And then there was Emerson Watts. He had no clue about the delay. His mom was finishing up her shift as a dispatcher, and his dad was driving a truck loaded with who knows what, driving who knows where for who knows how long. Emerson's TV was off on account that his mom had grounded him from watching it until he passed a spelling test. And his radio was sitting on Benny Clark's nightstand as a result of Emerson losing it as a bet as to who could spit a nickel the farthest. Emerson knew he had only lost because the wind had suddenly changed direction right before he went. But it wouldn't have done him any good to complain, so he hadn't. But complaining was exactly what was on his mind as he walked slowly down the slanted sidewalk that led him from his cozy one-story manufactured home to the large brick building that was Perkins Elementary. Cursing the winds with every agonizing step, Emerson plunged his hands as far as possible into the pockets of the raggedy gray sweatshirt that hung loosely from his meager frame. He squeezed his shoulders as close to his neck as he could and lowered his head in a feeble attempt to keep the Arctic air off his face. To help pass time in an attempt to think about something other than being a walking popsicle, he counted the lines on the sidewalk. 1, 2, 3. A large gust whisked across the road, threatening to knock Emerson over. He locked his knees, stood his ground, and waited for it to pass. When it had, he pulled his right hand out of his pocket and shook it at the heavens before continuing on his way. 4, 5, 6, 7. Back at the Covington household, Calvin was watching the Sahara documentary by default. The remote was on the other side of the living room, and he was too comfy under a pile of mismatched quilts to get up. Dalton Hayward was back in his truck, attempting to warm up his hands by holding them directly in front of the vents. Dalton had been driving the truck for 3 years now. When his uncle had told him he had gotten his job with the city, this wasn't exactly what he was expecting. A standout on the high school football team, he had always figured he'd end up playing ball in college somewhere. But his grades had been so poor, no school was able to offer him a scholarship. So garbage man it was. And although he wished it had been better, it could have been worse. The pay was pretty good, and he could listen to the radio while he worked. As Dalton rocked out to some AC/DC, he took a hard left-hand turn from Harmon onto 15th, a little too fast, sending some of the contents from the truck over the top and onto the street. 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 50, 51, 50... Walt placed the last of the dishes he had washed by hand into the drying rack and then wiped his hands on the sides of his jeans. He squinted up at the kitchen clock, the one his grandfather had given to Walt's mother right before she decided she didn't want to be a mom anymore. It looked like it was 8 o'clock, but he couldn't tell. Walt took 2 steps closer to it to confirm the time. It was 3 minutes until 8. He just remembered that John would be delivering some wood this morning. He figured he should probably clear off a spot on the front porch. 77, 78, 79. Emerson paused as a large paper cup blew across his path. Inside the warmth of his house, Wheels had exchanged the morning paper for an old shoebox filled with baseball cards and was now sorting them into piles by position. The stack of picture cards was getting high, so he decided to start a second one just to the right of it. 113, 114, 115, 100. Mrs. Watts dispatched an ambulance to North Elm for an elderly man who had fallen in a bathtub and broken his hip. 100 and... Emerson couldn't remember what number he was on. Just then the chimes of the Presbyterian church began to go off. "Not again," Emerson muttered to himself. He already had 2 tardies for the 6 weeks. One more would mean after-school detention. This made no sense to Emerson. He figured being tardy was a sign that he was already good at being somewhere longer than he should be. Why did he need to practice being at school later? He thought before school detention made much more sense, but he wasn't about to suggest it. He tried to make his legs run, but they refused on account that his toes were frozen. Emerson arrived at the front doors of Perkins Elementary, named after Harmon Perkins, the banker, who gave the county the land to build the school in exchange for it bearing his name. At 3 minutes past 8, on any other day, Emerson would have been late, but today he was the first one there. He hadn't noticed that the parking lot was empty, aside from Mr. Berman's old Chevy pickup, and he hadn't paid attention to the fact that all the lights in the building were off except for the main hallway, and he didn't even see the handwritten sign on the door saying that school was operating on a 2-hour delay until after he pulled on the handle 5 times. When Emerson finally did see the note, he cussed out the door in his head and gave it a good swift kick. The kick did nothing to the door, but it did cause intense pain to shoot through each of the frozen digits on his right foot. He hopped up and down on his left foot as he wiggled his right one in agony. He took 2 weak steps towards home and took another kick. This time he swung at a small rock as opposed to the large steel object. The rock popped up in the air a couple of feet and bounded down the sidewalk. He took a few more steps and kicked at it again. So from there, Emerson follows another couple of steps. He ends up finding this piece of glass quite by accident on the way home. And then after a school assembly, he gets this crazy idea that for a Christmas present, he's going to make his mom a present entirely out of glass that he finds. And it can't be too hard to find stuff on purpose when he could find some just by accident. But he finds it a little bit harder to do than he thinks, being a kid that just doesn't think 2 steps ahead and barely one. So a little later that week, he finds himself trying to find some more glass. Emerson assumed most bars had at least one good fight break out each night. He imagined that about half of those fights eventually spilled on onto the street with big, angry, drunk guys named Tiny and JT and Bruiser smashing beer bottles against buildings and dumpsters and against other big, angry, drunk guys. And since these fights were usually witnessed by smaller, less angry, but still drunk guys, he figured no one ever took the time to sweep up the debris left from all these fights at night. So consequently, Emerson envisioned there would be mounds of broken glass just waiting to be collected. Anticipating a huge haul, Emerson had grabbed 2 old pillowcases from the hall closet. He made sure to select the off-white ones with stains. He knew his mom wouldn't be using those anytime soon, and if sometime after Christmas she did happen to miss them, why then he could explain how he had used them to collect the glass for the greatest Christmas present she had ever received. Emerson checked around as nonchalantly as an 11-year-old boy out before 8 in the morning about to retrieve broken glass from an alley outside a bar could. After confirming he was alone, he pulled one of the pillowcases from his backpack and readied it to be filled. "Jackpot," he exclaimed. There, right at the entrance of the alleyway, Emerson found exactly what he thought he would: a broken beer bottle. The beer-soaked label was still holding some of the pieces together. He reached down to carefully pick up the larger pieces of brown glass. Somehow, Emerson had neglected to think broken beer bottles would smell like beer. So, the story, to me, and I guess for me, a lot in life, is a bunch of just random crazy things that happen to us and then sometimes lead us to where we need to be. It's kind of like the Rolling Stones old song, "You don't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need." And The Glass Collectors is not only a story about a boy who meets a friend who's trying to collect glass for this insane project, but it's kind of also about a bunch of broken individuals who kind of find some togetherness in meshing and being put together. So that's my timer to let me know I should start promoting my other books as well. I think it's a great, it's a kind of a great feel-good read. You know, as the weather starts to turn cold, it's kind of just kind of wraps you in, kind of that Arctic kind of chill. I did kind of stumble, kind of like Emerson stumbled upon glass. I kind of stumbled upon Joe and the 10 Wishes quite by accident. It was a story I told as a camp counselor to get kids to fall asleep. We had a really rowdy group, and someone was like, "Can someone think of a story to like just quiet these guys down?" And so I started with, well, there was this guy named Joe. Let me tell you a story about his 10 wishes. And I figured 10 because we wanted the kids to fall asleep, and I wasn't sure I could do it in 3. So I did that, and then years later, when I finally made this crazy New Year's resolution that I was going to write a book, Joe and the 10 Wishes was something I had told numerous times to campers. I had told it in my own class where I changed the genie from being a sewer genie, which was a little weird for kindergartners, to a can genie. And then the result was kind of a feel-good story that has been read by a lot of schools and a lot of classrooms. And my latest work, which I'm going to get the copies on Monday, and they're going to be in Tina's store, available for sale. If you know a teacher, if you have children that have a teacher, I'll have this afterward. You can look at my proof copy. Why does the teacher sleep under the desk? You know, who as a teacher hasn't encountered a kid outside of school and they're like, "What are you doing here? I thought you lived at the school." You know, it's like so weird. Or like if you're wearing like regular clothes, they're like, "What?" So I wrote this story, "Why does the teacher sleep under the desk?" Which is kind of funny, of this kid just thinking of like, why is she doing there? And why is she sleeping under the desk? I'll just share kind of one of the favorite pages of my kids is, where did her bed go? Did the principal take it as punishment for a time she forgot to make it? And my 2 kids love this page. Kaylee loves it because the teacher's wearing this really cool red and white striped dress. She thinks it's awesome. She's like, I want to dress like that. She's 3. And then my son loves the fact that the guinea pig's saying, "I did not see that coming." So it's kind of a fun little story if you're looking for a gift for a teacher you know that's kind of cute and warm. Thank you. If you don't remember anything else tonight, just remember that the next time you see an angry driver or someone you think might be angry and you think that they're giving you a mean gesture, they may just be trying to tell you where they're from. Okay. Thank you all so much.